Hi everyone, my name is FlagonHG, and this is the video of my attempt at a randomized hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Platinum. To see what I define as hardcore Nuzlocke rules, check out the description below. But in short, no items in battle, no overleveling past the gym leader's ace, and we're playing on set mode. For those of you who don't know, let's break down what a randomized hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Platinum means. Essentially, it's a hardcore Nuzlocke using a modified copy of Pokémon Platinum, where all the Pokémon in the game have been completely randomized. So instead of the usual starters, you get to choose between 3 random Pokémon. Wild Pokémon are randomized. The other Pokémon that other trainers use are randomized. It's all random. There's a lot of different ways you can randomize the game based on a bunch of different settings. I've provided a detailed list of which settings I used in the description of the video, and I'll mention a handful of them throughout the video, but to save some time, I'll skip breaking them down in detail. Randomized Nuzlockes are pretty popular, especially for streaming, and I can see why. The random nature of the game makes each new encounter exciting, and the mystery of what's waiting just around the river bend is really enticing as a viewer. I've always been a little bit hesitant to play a randomizer though, because, well, they're so random. There's not a lot of preparation in randomizers, since you don't really have a lot of control over what you're about to face. You kinda just go in guns blazing and hope for the best. Sometimes it's really fun, but I much prefer planning for known challenges. Nevertheless, after failing the Pokémon Diamond Hardcore Nuzlocke using Fire types only, and the first round of the Pokémon Black 2 Hardcore Nuzlocke using Dark types only, I was feeling pretty mentally exhausted. So I was convinced by Twitch chat to play a randomizer. It was meant to be a break from the theory crafting and preparation that usually goes into those monologues. With a randomizer, I could just play the game and not think too hard about it. I finished the run on Twitch a long time ago, and I wasn't ever really planning on making it into a video, but I vaguely mentioned its existence in a previous video, and over one whole person in the comment section asked to see it, so here we are. Plus, if I don't squeeze every ounce of potential monetization out of a Nuzlocke run, did I even actually do it? Okay, obviously that's a joke. It's not about the money for me, and I would be doing this even if no one was watching. So it goes without saying, but thank you again all so much for your support. I really do love making these videos. You know what else I love? This week's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can find thousands of classes designed to teach you creative skills, ranging from topics like illustration, graphic design, and video editing. Skillshare has been a sponsor on this channel before, and I think they're a great sponsor because they have so many classes that are perfect for teaching people how to start content creation. Literally everything I learned about video editing with Adobe Premiere Pro is from Jordy Vanderput's Adobe Premiere Pro for Beginners class. And that's just one of the thousands of classes on Skillshare. The best part about Skillshare classes is that you can complete them at your own pace and however you want. There's no commitment, you can skip individual lessons if you're not interested, and because Skillshare is focused on learning, all the classes are ad-free, so you don't have to be interrupted by some bozo droning on and on and on. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description below will get a free trial of Skillshare's premium membership, so that you can explore your creativity for free. Thanks so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into the challenge. Just as a quick reminder before we start, even during a randomizer, I play with Species Clause, so I'll be able to re-roll encounters until I get a unique encounter, but I can only use one of each unique evolution line. Okay, let's see how this goes. I start my journey by picking my starter. I've used the randomizer setting that always replaces the starters with a Pokemon that has 3 stages. So my choices are Spheal, Totodile, and Larvitar. I let Twitch chat pick my starter by using a poll, and they decide on Larvitar. But that's a stupid choice, so I ignore them and I pick Spheal. This means that our rival Doof has a Totodile. I managed to clap him down with some water guns and powder snows, as Doof just lives up to his name and goes for a bunch of leers. I name the victorious Spheal Chub, and then we're off. From here, we start catching wild encounters. For the sake of time, I'm not going to cover every single encounter that I get in this playthrough, but I'll obviously mention the ones that I use in major battles. From Route 202, I catch a Munchlax and name him Chigbungus. From Twinleaf Town, I fish up a fully evolved Staraptor and name him Mohawk. From Route 204, I catch a fully evolved Blastoise and name him Harry. By the way, Twitch chat is helping me choose the names here, so naturally blame them for any of the names that you think are bad, but credit me for any of the ones that you like. From Orbor Gate, I get an Infernape and I name him Munkint. And from Orbor Mine, I get a Leafeon and I name him Spinach. This gives us a full team of 6, meaning it's time to take on Rourke. He's normally a rock-type trainer, but remember all his Pokemon are random now. So he leads with a Chinchou, which actually has the perfect type combination to be really good into most of my team. I switch to Spinach, who gets paralyzed by a Thunder Wave. Then Chinchou starts using Water Gun as I go for tackles. Thanks to potions and some unfortunate full paras, it takes a while to knock out the Chinchou, but eventually it goes down. Then Magby comes out. So I switch to Chub, who gets hit by a smokescreen. Ember doesn't do much to Chub though thanks to Thick Fat, so 2 Water Guns, which both hit, are enough to take down the Magby. Next is the Holy Savior himself, so I switch to Harry as Ammonite uses Withdraw. A few Water Guns take out Ammonite as it just does pitiful damage with Bite. The downside of a randomizer is that every Pokemon has its default level up moveset at whatever level it happens to be. So a lot of the time, randomized battles can be really underwhelming. Especially if I happen to have 4 fully evolved Pokemon on my team before the first gym battle. Anyways, after getting the first gym badge, I get another encounter outside Valley Windworks. It's a Yanma, and I name him Lil Fly, and I cannot tell you how much I just love this little guy. Look at how cute he is. He's amazing and perfect, and his little wings, I just love him so much. He's just like a little Flygon. Absolutely adorable. So naturally, I replace Mohawk with Lil Fly, and then we take on Galactic Commander Mars. But without her Perugly, I really don't see this being particularly difficult. She leads Zigzagoon, and I lead Lil Fly. Lil Fly has Compound Eyes, so 2 Sonic Booms take out the Zigzagoon. And then Zangoose comes out. Not a problem. I switch out to Chub. Yeah, okay. That is a problem. Well, I try to lock him into Swords Dance with Encore, but Zangoose uses Quick Attack before I get the chance. So now I've accidentally locked Zangoose into a boosted priority stab move. Let's not beat around the bush. Zangoose completely wipes my entire team. I'm underleveled and I'm underprepared. I honestly couldn't care less about most of these literal randos going down, but watching Lil Fly go down was pretty hard. Our time together was so short, but so sweet. May we meet in another lifetime, Lil Fly. Now technically I have Pokemon in the box here, but I tend to consider a whiteout a loss, so that's a reset. On attempt 2, I slightly changed the randomizer settings to reflect what's ultimately written in the description of this video. Specifically, I make it so that wild Pokemon are randomized to Pokemon of the same power level. This means that if there's an originally weak Pokemon, it will always be randomized to an equally weak Pokemon. In attempt 1, I think I had set this for trainer Pokemon, but not for wild Pokemon, which is why Rourke's Pokemon still sucked, but I was able to find fully evolved Pokemon. This time, my starter choices are Piplup, Totodile, and Togepi. I picked Togepi because it's cute and Togekiss is awesome, but I soon realized that this is a pretty terrible choice, because Togepi does not know any attacking moves. So I literally can't beat the first rival fight. I know that a lot of people say that the Nuzlocke starts when you get Pokeballs, but that's not my rule set. If you lose in the first rival battle, you lose the Nuzlocke. So that's a reset. Okay, third time's a charm. My choices are Cyndaquil, Charmander, and Starly. I go with Cyndaquil for no other real reason than I rarely get to use Cyndaquil. Doof leads Charmander. We have the exact same stats, so it's a total toss-up as to who wins. Unfortunately, Charmander has Scratch, which is marginally better than Tackle because it doesn't miss, and he also seems to be completely immune to the effects of Smokescreen. So Cyndaquil goes down, and it's time for another reset. As the saying goes, fourth time's a charm, right? My choices are Totodile, Zubat, and Charmander. I pick Totodile, and Doof picks Zubat. So this should be a pretty easy victory. Supersonic makes us hit ourselves in confusion once, but then Totodile snaps out of confusion on the next turn. So we just gotta hit the Zubat one more time. Yeah, sure, you know what? Sure, that might as well happen. Okay, attempt 5. This time, Professor Rowan offers me a stir-fry of mixed veggies, Chikorita, Lotad, and Oddish. So I pick Chikorita, and Doof picks Lotad. And then somehow, against all insurmountable odds, I'm able to get past the very first rival fight, and I can actually play the game. I name Chikorita Pear, and then we're off. My first encounter is an Nincada. She's female, so I name her Basalt, as I think I'm now legally required to do for all female Nincadas. And then from Twinleaf Town, I fish up a Cleffa. You should now see how randomizing based on power level works. Since this is most certainly originally a Magikarp, it's randomized to something equally as useless. I name her Table. From Ravage Path, I find a Cyndaquil, so now we have 2 of the 3 Johto starters. I name him George, and then on Route 203 I catch a Rattata, which on its face seems like a pretty underwhelming encounter. But this Rattata has the ability Guts, which is pretty awesome. I name her Millie. In Orberg Gate, I catch a Pikachu, and I name her Lemon. And then, on Route 207, I catch a Volbeat, and I name him Owl City. 9,999 more Volbeat to go. With that, we've got a full team. There's a lot of other encounters, obviously, but those are the notable ones. George evolves into Quilava during some training, and then it's time to fight Rourke for the second time. Right off the bat, I start with a pre-poisoned Millie. With Guts, the poison gives her an attack boost, so she's a pretty reliable Pokemon to lead with, since there isn't too much that she can't hit for at least neutral damage. Case in point, she's able to easily knock out Rourke's Spoink with a Bite. Next up is Shelgon, which is a massive upgrade from the Onix that it replaced. I try a Bite, which doesn't do much damage, and then Shelgon retaliates with a Headbutt. So I switch into Pear, who tanks a critical hit Bite. So I use Synthesis and then take some damage from a Headbutt. Then I go for a Poison Powder, but it misses. So on the next turn, I use Synthesis again. But then Shelgon gets another critical hit. Fine. Synthesis again. I can do this all day, Shelgon. Well, I guess actually I can't, because I'm almost out of Synthesis PP. Anyways, I go for another Poison Powder, but I miss that one too. So it's time for another Synthesis. And then I go for another so that I'm safe to a critical hit. This lets me finally connect with a Poison Powder. I switch to George. Then I go for a Leer, and Shelgon hits another critical hit with Headbutt. I'm not confident that a Quick Attack will kill from this range, so I switch to Lemon as Rourke heals. I go for a Quick Attack, which does nothing as Shelgon uses Leer. So then I use Tail Whip as Shelgon hits a very hard Headbutt. My team is looking pretty weak, so I just use Quick Attack with Lemon, which isn't enough for the kill. Then Shelgon retaliates with a Rage, and our first team member goes down. Millie comes back out to revenge kill with a Quick Attack. But Rourke still has one more Pokemon left, and it's his strongest one yet. Never mind. I switch to Table and use Charm as Skiploom uses Stun Spore. After a few turns, I'm able to lock the Skiploom into Tail Whip with Encore. So that allows me to freely switch into George, who's able to knock out the Skiploom with 2 Embers. That's badge number 1. The second badge number 1. After this, Lemon evolves into Bayleaf, and Table evolves into Clefairy. Then Millie evolves into Raticate. So now our team is looking pretty solid. Let's try not to wipe to Mars this time. She leads Hoot Hoot, so a pre-poisoned Millie knocks it out with a Hyper Fang. Sharpedo is the substitute for Purugly, so I switch to Table and then lock him into Focus Energy. Then it's just a switch to Pear, and 2 Razor Leafs are enough to knock it out. With that, we've got our furthest attempt yet. Yay! On Route 205, I catch a Dratini. I name him Paschetti, and I make the mistake of making him a part of my team. I was really enticed by the idea of using a Dragonite, but that doesn't actually happen until level 55. Until then, Dratini and Dragonair are kinda garbage, but I don't end up accepting that until much, much later in the run. At least he has Dragon Rage for now, which is very good in the early game. The only other noteworthy encounter here is a Duskull from Mount Cornet. Having a Ghost type for pivoting is incredibly useful in a randomizer, especially since a lot of Pokemon have normal type moves in their moveset. I name him Hades. Okay, Gardenia time. As usual, I don't know what's coming, but I'm just gonna lead pre-poisoned Millie. Gardenia starts out with a Chinchou, so a Guts-boosted Hyper Fang knocks it out in one shot. Then Electrode comes out. Electrode uses a Light Screen, and I use Hyper Fang for big damage. I try to see if a Quick Attack will be enough to kill it, but Electrode hangs on with a Sliver. Fortunately, it only hits a very weak Spark in retaliation. Unfortunately, on the next turn, Gardenia uses a Super Potion, and Millie misses a Hyper Fang. So it's time to switch to Paschetti, who gets paralyzed by Spark. But then Shedskin instantly heals him. 2 Dragon Rages are enough to finish off the Electrode. And so last is Bayonet, but it really can't do anything to Table. So I Encore it into Curse, and then switch to George, and then watch it kill itself with a second Curse. And that's badge number 2. After this, there's a few more encounters, but the only one that I end up using is Wailmer, which is beached up in Wayward Cave. I name him Moby Thick. Now it's time for Fantina. She leads Bellsprout, and I lead, you guessed it, except this time I've now taught Millie Return, so she hits even harder than with Hyper Fang, and Return can't miss. Bellsprout goes down, and then Vespiquen comes out. I decide to stay in and let Millie just take the wheel. She does not disappoint and knocks out the Vespiquen in one shot thanks to a critical hit. Last for Fantina is Marowak, who's a bit too tanky for Millie to one-shot it, so I switch to Pear and then knock out the Marowak with 2 magical leaves. And that's Fantina defeated. Next up, there's a whole lot of other encounters. In Lost Tower, I catch a Spearow and I name him Kenya. This isn't actually an important encounter, but, you know, the meme thing. Pescetti evolves into Dragonair here as well. And then on Route 214, I find a Houndour, which can actually be caught here in a non-randomized version of Platinum as well. So that's neat, I guess. I name her Dogmeat, and then she goes into the box. Lemon also evolves into Meganium. And then it's time for Maylene. She leads Meowth, which instantly gets clapped by a return from Millie. Then Charmeleon comes out, but it too gets clapped by Millie. She's easily got the biggest kill count of the team so far. Last is Blissey. This thing has terrible defense, and actually at level 32, it literally doesn't know a damaging move. So it's completely safe to click return here. We just gotta wait for about 45 seconds, as the Platinum HP bar does its thing. Almost there. Okay, well, I guess the Blissey survives with a Sliver, but on the next turn, a final return knocks it out, winning us the 4th badge. Okay, encounter time. At Valor Lakefront, I find a Vibrava, so like the narcissist I am, I name him HG. On Route 213, I catch a Grovyle and name him Sky. And on Route 212, I catch a Machop and name her Wrassel. Then George evolves into Typhlosion, and Hades evolves into Dusclops. And so now it's time for Crash or Wake. He leads Espeon, which instantly gets one-shot by a Crunch from Millie. Giraffridge comes out next, and also goes down to a Crunch. And then last is Slowbro, who actually does tank a Crunch pretty handily. Well, it was almost back-to-back gym sweeps for Millie, but the poison damage is starting to build up here. So I switch to Pear, who finishes off the Slowbro with a Magical Leaf. And with that, Psychic Trainer Wake is defeated, and we get badge number 5. With the new level cap, Moby Thick is able to evolve into Wailord. And now from here, the game actually gets significantly harder, because one of the randomizer settings that I clicked makes it so that every Pokemon at level 36 or higher becomes fully evolved after randomization. So now pretty much every trainer will have a team of strong Pokemon. I obviously can't show every single trainer battle, but there were a lot of close calls. Eventually, I get to my first confrontation with Cyrus. He's spewing some pseudo-intellectual BS about world balance, and it sounds like it's ripped directly from one of those online message boards of the early 2000s. I bet Cyrus wouldn't get vaccinated. Don't be like Cyrus. Cyrus leads with the B-Barrel, and Millie is a little tired from pitching 95-mile-per-hour fastballs for 2 gyms in a row, so I lead Pescetti. B-Barrel only knows normal-type moves at this level, so I switch to Hades as he goes for Amnesia. Cyrus then switches B-Barrel out into Quagsire, and I go for a Curse. A Wikiberry cures a little bit of health. Then I switch to Pear as Quagsire uses Amnesia. Magical Leaf knocks it out on the next turn. And then Cyrus sends out Garchomp. That's not great. Based on the Garchomp's level, this is what Cyrus's Murkrow is randomized to. At first I thought it was kinda weird that the randomizer would consider a duck to be the same power level as a freaking Garchomp. But then I realized that what probably happened is that it was randomized to a Gabite and then fully evolved based on the setting that I just mentioned. So, kinda shot myself in the foot with that one. Well, without an Ice type attack, this is pretty scary. Garchomp hits a Dragon Claw as I go for a Poison Powder, which thankfully lands. I'm at risk to a critical hit Dragon Claw, but Pear is by far my bulkiest Pokemon other than Hades, who's at half health, so switching isn't really an option. I kinda gotta just stall with Synthesis, but every turn I do that, I'm risking a critical hit. So is it really that surprising when Garchomp gets a critical hit on the next turn? That knocks out our starter, marking the first death since the first gym battle. Moby Thick is able to come in and finish off the Garchomp, but even that is really only because he goes for Slash on the first turn for some reason. I have no idea why, but since he doesn't get another critical hit with Dragon Claw on the next turn, Moby Thick holds on and knocks him out. Last is B-Barrel, but since it can't damage Hades, I switch him in, use Curse, and then watch the life slowly drain from B-Barrel's dumb face. And that's Cyrus defeated. After burying Lemon, we have to decide who to train up as a replacement. Who should I use to replace my Grass-type starter? Wrassel the Machop is the obvious candidate. With some training, she evolves into Machoke. And another one of the randomizer settings I clicked makes it so that trait evolutions evolve by level up instead. So after a bit more training, Wrassel also evolves into Machamp. And then it's time for Byron. He leads Toxicroak, and I lead the always reliable Millie. but the consistently fully evolved Pokemon are starting to make her a little less reliable as a lead. Fortunately, she still has enough power to knock out the Toxicroak in one shot. Honchkrow, on the other hand, not so much. Oh, okay, unless she gets a critical hit. What a beast. Amistar comes out third, so I switch to my Grass-type starter. Oh wait, he was killed. Okay, I switch to Wrassel, who's able to knock out the Amistar with a few Brick Breaks. It does take a few turns because Amistar took some plays out of the Pelipper playbook and Protect stalled for a while, but eventually it goes down, and that's Byron defeated. From here, there's no new noteworthy encounters, just a bunch of battles with Galactic Commanders and the trainers on the way to Snowpoint City. They're tough, but we get there in one piece. So let's just jump straight to Candace. She leads Sudowoodo, so it seems that Millie has finally met her match. I switch to Wrassel, who takes out the Sudowoodo with a few Brick Breaks. Candace wastes a Hyper Potion too here, which is nice. Next for Candace is Togekiss, who has a pretty stacked moveset of Sky Attack, Air Slash, Extreme Speed, and Aura Sphere. I switch to Moby Thick as Togekiss fortunately misses an Air Slash. I say fortunately because Air Slash does a huge chunk of damage on the next turn. But Moby Thick is able to finish it off with 2 Surfs. Third is Breloom, so I switch to George, and a single Flamethrower is enough to kill it. And then last is Floatzel, so I switch to Piscetti, who tanks an Aqua Jet. Floatzel hits a Crunch, but then Piscetti nails it with a critical hit Dragon Rush for the one-shot. Nice job, buddy. That's badge number 7. After that, I backtrack to Route 217 and catch a Sneasel. I name her Stabitha. She goes in the box, for now. Then I get a Reaper's Cloth, and I use it to evolve Hades into Dusknoir. My favorite thing about this randomizer so far is that I've gotten to use a lot of Pokemon that I almost never use. The trait evolutions like Dusknoir and Machamp are really good examples of that. Anyways, from here, we can fast forward to the showdown on the top of Spear Pillar. First up is the double battle against Mars and Jupiter, which is always a bit of a challenge since Doof comes along for the ride. Mars and Jupiter lead Exeggutor and Dusknoir. I lead Moby Thick and Doof leads Marowak. Exeggutor knows Woodhammer, so I really can't stay in here. I switch to George, who tanks a Woodhammer, and then Dusknoir sets a curse on Marowak. And then Marowak lands a very weak Thrash on Exeggutor. On the next turn, I knock out the Exeggutor with a Flamethrower, and then Dusknoir uses Mean Look on George as Marowak just whiffs a Thrash. Mean Look means that I can't switch out of battle as Lumineon comes in, so that's not great. I decide to try and kill the Lumineon quickly since it can use Whirlpool, but a Rock Climb doesn't do much, and then it sets up Aqua Ring. Dusknoir does surprisingly good damage into George with a Shadow Punch, and then Marowak hits an incredibly pathetic Thrash. Things aren't looking good for George here. On the next turn, I decide to pivot to trying to kill the Dusknoir, so I hit it with a Flamethrower, but that leaves it with a Sliver. Lumineon then uses Whirlpool as Dusknoir knocks out the Marowak. So now, even if I take out the Dusknoir, I'll still be trapped by the Whirlpool. Ugly brings in Crawdadly, which is completely useless. I Flamethrower the Dusknoir for the KO, and Lumineon does a baby amount of damage with Whirlpool. And then Crawdadly uses Ancient Power for basically no damage. Then Amistar comes out to replace the Dusknoir. So, yeah, George is definitely dead. I can't switch because of the Whirlpool, so the only thing that I can do is click Flamethrower to do a little bit of damage to Lumineon. And then a Brine kills George. So now I've killed 2 of the 3 Johto starters. Well, actually in attempt 4, my Totodile died, so I've killed all 3 of the Johto starters. I bring in Wrassel to kill the Amistar, but it uses Protect as Crawdadly just wastes time doing essentially nothing. Amistar also gets a double Protect as Doof continues to do nothing of use. Seriously, at this point it might just be better to kill Doof's Crawdadly. Wrassel is finally able to get a Brick Break off, but Amistar survives and retaliates with a very strong Brine. On the next turn, I switch to Moby Thick. Then, Waterspout knocks out the Amistar. Gramble is out next, but another Waterspout gets the double KO on Gramble and Lumineon. Last is Dunsparce, but a final single-target Waterspout knocks it out in one shot, so that's Mars and Jupiter defeated. Before plunging into the Distortion world, I gotta dispose of George's body and find his replacement. I choose Dogmeat the Houndour, who evolves into Houndoom after a bit of training. I've also finally decided that Piscetti is no longer bringing enough to the table to justify a team slot. So I replace him with HG the Vibrava, who evolves into HG the Flygon after some training. With all our new team members trained up, it's time to take on Cyrus. He leads Rhyperior, and I lead Millie. So it looks like pre-poisoning her for this fight, and then consistently healing her with super potions as we walk through the entire Distortion world was a complete waste of time. Oh well. I switch to Moby Thick, who tanks a Hammer Arm, and then I retaliate with a Surf for the one-shot. Next is Blissey, but her only attacking moves are normal type moves, so it's a safe switch to Hades. This causes Cyrus to switch to Magmortar, so Hades whiffs a Will-O-Wisp. Then I go for a Shadow Sneak as Magmortar uses Flamethrower, which burns me. This was really stupid because now Dusknoir is no longer a flawless Blissey counter. Oh well. On the next turn I switch to HG, and just look at what they did to my baby. Look at how ugly this back sprite is. A bunch of Game Freak employees must have gathered for a morning meeting one day, said let's make Flygon look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then just broke early for lunch. This sprite is a crime. Well, whatever. An Earthquake one-shots the Magmortar, and then Blissey comes back out. So I click Earthquake, and then I go watch the extended cut of Return of the King. After the hobbits have all safely returned to the Shire, I come back to the game just in time to watch Blissey's HP hit 0. Next is Poliwrath, but he only knows normal and fighting type moves by level up, so I switch to Hades. So Cyrus switches out to yet another fire type, so Will-O-Wisp is useless again. I switch to HG on a Fire Fang, and then I hit an Earthquake. Feels a bit like deja vu here. Poliwrath comes back out, but Hades won't survive 2 turns of burn damage, so I stay in and go for an Earthquake. Poliwrath retaliates with the Dynamic Punch that easily would have killed me if it crit. It also confuses me, so I switch to Wrassle and tank a submission. Then Poliwrath misses a Dynamic Punch as I go for a Brick Break, which leaves him with a Sliver. Cyrus uses a full restore, so I go for another Brick Break. And then I switch to Millie. Looking back at the footage, I can't really tell you why I did this. It doesn't look like I needed to sacrifice her here. But thankfully, Poliwrath misses a Dynamic Punch, so Millie is able to retaliate and kill it with a return. And that wins us the battle. From here, it's time to face Giratina. In the randomizer settings, I've made it so that legendaries get randomized to other legendaries, so I have no idea what's coming my way. I approach the foe Giratina and prepare for the worst. Okay, well, I guess it just didn't randomize. Whatever, since this thing is technically an eligible Nuzlocke encounter, I use a Master Ball to catch it, and then I just dump it in the box because I don't use legendaries. With that, it's time to face Volkner. He leads Gastrodon, and I lead Millie. Did you really expect anything different at this point? 2 returns take out the Gastrodon as it just sets up Rain Dance. And then Lucario comes out, so I switch to Hades on an Aura Sphere. Lucario uses Dragon Pulse as I miss a Will-O-Wisp. On the next turn, it uses Swords Dance, and I manage to finally connect with a Will-O-Wisp. Lucario can go ahead and just set up as many Swords Dances as it wants though. The only move that it can use to hit Hades is Dragon Pulse, which is special, so Swords Dances are a waste of time. A few turns later, and Lucario goes down. Magmortar is next, which is what Electivire was actually randomized to. Kinda funny. So I switch to Moby Thick, who loses over half his health to a critical hit Flamethrower. Kinda awkward. Okay, so I switch to HG on a second Flamethrower. Fortunately, it doesn't burn, so an Earthquake hits it for the one-shot. And then Gorbrus is out last for Volkner. Our team is actually kinda weak to water types, which isn't great since it's the most common type in the game. But oh well. I stay in and go for an Earthquake, and then Gorbis hits a surprisingly strong Aqua Tail, but thankfully it doesn't crit, so another Earthquake knocks it out. And that's Volkner defeated. After this, I make the hard decision that it's time to bench Millie. She's had an amazing run. She's single-handedly knocked out 12 of the 26 Pokemon that were used by the 8 gym leaders. But she's starting to get a bit outclassed by the strength of fully evolved Pokemon. So I decide to give her early retirement and bring in Stabitha, who evolves into Weavile. Stabitha is on the team almost exclusively for any inevitable Garchomps, Dragonites, or Salamences that might rear their head during the Elite Four fights. But before the Elite Four, it's our final fight with Doof. I've been skipping these since they're mostly pretty easy, but for the sake of finality, let's see how this one plays out. He leads Staraptor, which doesn't seem very random. Regardless, a Choice Specs boosted Water Spout knocks it out in one shot. Then Torterra comes out. Is Doof just not randomized? Well, either way, I switch to Hades, who gets hit by a Leech Seed, and then an Ice Punch knocks out the Torterra. Next is Doof's starter, Ludicolo. So I guess he is randomized. I switch to Dogmeat on a Giga Drain, and since Ludicolo doesn't know any water-type moves, it's safe to knock it out with 2 Flamethrowers. Fourth is Primate, and at this point, I imagine you know exactly what I'm gonna do. I switch to Hades, who's immune to all of Primape's attacks, so Doof switches out to Armaldo as I connect with a Will-O-Wisp. Then I switch to Wrassle and take out Armaldo after a few turns. Blaziken comes out next, so I switch to HG, who tanks a Blaze Kick, and then one-shots it with an Earthquake. Last is Primate, so I switch to Hades, but I get swaggered on the switch-in. Kinda inconvenient, because it means I have to switch back to Wrassel, who also gets swaggered. So I switch back to Hades. I'm able to get off a Shadow Sneak before Primeape uses Swagger again. So then I gotta switch back to Wrassel, and then back into Hades for a single Shadow Sneak, and then I gotta just repeat that until Primeape goes down. A few turns later, we knock out the Primeape, and that's Doof defeated. Okay, so here's our final team of random Pokemon, leveled up to level 59 to match whatever Lucian's strongest Pokemon is gonna be. Overall, I think it's a really solid team, so hopefully they can handle whatever's coming our way. Let's see if we've got what it takes. First is Aaron, and he starts out with a Machamp, but the level difference makes it pretty easy to take it out with a single Water Spout from Moby Thick. Then Ludicolo comes out, so I just switch to Dogmeat, who gets hit by a Tri-Attack, and then 2 Flamethrowers take it out, just like what happened a few minutes ago. Third is Mantine, so I switch to Hades, who gets hit by a pretty hard Hydro Pump. Mantine also sets up Aqua Ring, and then I hit it with an Ice Punch. I try to see if Shadow Sneak is enough for a 2-shot, because this thing has Confuse Ray, but unfortunately it's not enough, so on the second turn I go for Ice Punch, but get confused and then hit myself in confusion. So I switch to HG, who gets hit hard with a Hydro Pump. But a Dragon Claw finishes off the Mantine. Next for Aaron is Ambipom, but it only has normal type attacking moves, so I switch to Hades and hit it with a Will-O-Wisp. And then there's nothing he can do to me. Aaron delays the game by using a full restore, so it takes a bit longer than I would have preferred to knock it out, but the Ambipom does eventually succumb to our Ice Punches and burn damage. I'm not really sure why Aaron didn't switch Ambipom out. I assumed it was because whatever he had in the back also couldn't damage Hades, but then Aaron brings out his own Dusknoir. So I don't know. I switch to Moby Thick and take out the Dusknoir and 2 Surfs, so that's Aaron defeated. Second is Bertha. She leads Wailord, and I lead Moby Thick, which is probably the funniest mirror match to imagine. It's just me and Bertha pressed against the walls of this tiny room as 2 beached whales kinda just stare at each other. I decide to go for a Water Spout, which does a huge chunk to Wailord, who then uses Dive. So I stay in and miss a Water Spout. Surf would have actually hit the Wailord while it was underwater, but I'm locked into Water Spout because of choice specs. So on the next turn, another Water Spout takes out the Wailord, and then for the 3rd battle in a row, Ludicolo comes out. So I switch to Dogmeat and take it out with 2 Flamethrowers. Yay, randomizers! Next up is Caesar.
Well, that was a freebie.
Last is Starmie, but because it's a stone evolution, its level up moveset is trash. It doesn't actually know any water type moves, so it's safe to stay in, and a single Dark Pulse knocks it out to win us the battle. Third is Flint. You know, there's actually a decent chance that Flint has more fire types during this randomizer than he does during Diamond and Pearl, but he actually starts by leading the exact opposite of a fire type. So I switch to Dogmeat on an Ingrain and then light him up. Next is Tentacruel, who is actually pretty difficult for us to deal with. As I said earlier, I don't have great matchups into water types, especially fast ones. So I switch to HG, who gets hit with a very hard Hydro Pump. I then go for an Earthquake, thinking that we'll outspeed the Tentacruel, since Flagon and Tentacruel are at the same speed stat, and I have the level advantage. But Tentacruel is still able to outspeed us, and hit another brutal Hydro Pump. Fortunately, HG survives with 6 HP, which means he can retaliate with an Earthquake to knock out the Tentacruel. But then, Hail is enough to finish off dear Quasimodo. May he rest in peace. I bring in Moby Thick as Flint brings in Vileplume. So it's back to Dogmeat, who knocks out the Vileplume with a Flamethrower. Next is Muck. Wow, it would be really cool to have a ground type right about now. I switch to Hades, who dodges a Gunk Shot. Then I hit a Will-O-Wisp as Muck misses a Screech. Then I switch to Moby Thick, who gets hit by a Screech. Finally, a Water Spout knocks out the Muck. Last is Venusaur, so I guess Flint went all in on grass and poison types. I switch to Dogmeat, who gets hit by a Worry Seed, which changes my ability from Early Bird to Insomnia. Other than for rest strategies, Insomnia is essentially just a better version of Early Bird, so I think that's kind of funny. Anyways, for the 3rd time this battle, I torch some plants, and that's Flint defeated. Without HG, another Tentacruel is going to be a pretty big problem, so let's hope that the last 11 Pokemon don't randomize into another Tentacruel. Last for the Elite Four is Lucian. He leads Kangaskhan, and I lead Dogmeat, because he just learned Nasty Plot, so I figured I might be able to get lucky with the lead and get a free setup. Unfortunately I don't, so I switch to Hades. Kangaskhan hits a pair of nasty outrages as I land a Will-O-Wisp. She then gets confused as the outrage ends. I want to keep Hades healthy for whatever's in the back, so I switch to Wrestle as Kangaskhan hits herself in confusion. On the next turn, she hits herself again, and then Wrestle knocks her out with a Revenge. Next is Jump Pluff, so I switch back to our resident Arsonist, who gets hit by another Worry Seed. Jump Pluff goes for a bounce, so I do miss the first Flamethrower. And then Bounce does a surprisingly large amount of damage, and also manages to paralyze Dogmeat. But thankfully, we don't get fully paralyzed, and we're able to take out Jump Pluff in one shot. Next is Hitmonchan, but as with most fighting types, he can't do anything to Hades. Lucian then switches to Licky Licky, who gets hit with a Will-O-Wisp. So then I switch to Wrestle. A single Brick Break knocks it out, and then Ampharos comes out. I decide to stay in and hit a Brick Break as Ampharos sets up a light screen. Another Brick Break won't kill it, and I don't care about breaking the light screen, so I just go for Revenge. Discharge thankfully doesn't paralyze me, so I'm able to knock out the Ampharos with a boosted Revenge. Last is Hitmonchan, so I switch back to Hades. We miss about 1,000,000 Will-O-Wisps, and Hitmonchan also spams Detect. But eventually we connect, and then a few turns later, Hitmonchan goes down. And that's the Elite Four defeated. Last is the champion Cynthia. Her team is fully randomized, so I have no idea what to expect. But whatever the Garchomp randomizes into is going to be at least as powerful, if not more powerful. So this is pretty scary. We enter her chamber and start the final battle of the randomizer. Cynthia leads Camerupt and I lead Dogmeat. This would have been a really great time to lead Moby Thick, but I tried to get a little cheeky with Nasty Plot set up again. Well, I switch to Moby Thick, who gets hit by an incredibly hard Earthquake. On the next turn, we outspeed and hit a Surf for the one-shot. Next is Rhyperior.
Well, that was a freebie.
Third is... Okay, so Cynthia's Garchomp randomized into a Garchomp. Well, in all fairness, that is an equal power level. I go for a Surf, but Garchomp uses Dig. I'm choice locked here, so that's why I'm not going for Ice Beam. Garchomp surfaces on the next turn, and Moby Thick hangs on with 5 HP to hit a Surf. Then Garchomp goes for another Dig. At this point, Moby Thick has done his job. So, with a final salute, the Great Giant goes down. Rest well, you beautiful, enormous creature. Stabitha comes in and finishes off the Garchomp with an Ice Punch, so at least Cynthia's strongest Pokemon is now defeated. Blaziken comes out next, so I switch to Hades, who takes a really strong Blaze Kick. This thing can actually do a lot of damage into my whole team, so this is not looking particularly good. Hades takes another Blaze Kick and then hits a Nightshade. Then I just go for a little bit of chip with Shadow Sneak as Blaziken finishes off Hades with a Brave Bird. Rest well, buddy. With the damage done by Hades, I should be able to knock out Blaziken with an Ice Punch from Stabitha, as long as I can set up a Swords Dance beforehand. I have a Focus Sash, so I can definitely survive one hit, but if Blaziken burns me, it's all over. So I go to set up a Swords Dance. No burn. Okay, we're okay. An Ice Punch kills the Blaziken on the next turn. Scizor is next for Cynthia, so I switch to Dogmeat, and a Flamethrower finishes off the Scizor. Now Cynthia's down to her last Pokemon, and it's an Empoleon. It's actually pretty tough. It can easily Hydro Pump Dogmeat, but it also knows Drill Peck to hit Machamp, and Weavile can't really do anything to it. So I straight up can't play around a critical hit here. The first thing to do is get some damage on Empoleon with Dogmeat. So Dogmeat hits a Flamethrower, and then the goodest of girls goes down to a Hydro Pump. This does give me a free switch into Wrestle though, so as long as Empoleon doesn't crit here, we'll win. Cynthia goes for Hydro Pump. And we survive. Empoleon goes down to a Brick Break, winning us the battle and the run. And with that, we've made our way through all the randomness and into the Hall of Fame. It took everything we had, and there were some pretty devastating deaths along the way. But this marked the very first time that I had successfully completed a challenge run on Twitch, so it did feel pretty gratifying. Thank you so much to everyone who watched along live, and if you didn't, I hope you liked getting to watch it through this video. If you did enjoy watching, please like the video and subscribe. Or don't, I don't know. But just so you know, arbitrary subscriber numbers do help me validate my own self-worth, so that's always nice. If you want to keep up with my streams and future challenges, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Twitch. And you can also join the Flag on HG community Discord, where you can discuss Nuzlocking, make recommendations for future challenges, and participate in community events, like the Monotype tournament that'll be happening in just a few weeks. The link is in the description. Stay tuned for more Nuzlocke videos, and until then, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.